There are many ideas that have changed the world, many truths that have been told that have been seen as absolute fact. But what if I told you there was only one truth that could be known for absolute certain? I think, therefore I am. One of the most famous lines in philosophy and in the world in general. Rene Descartes said this in his writing, Discourse on the Method. And this idea of the only truth that you can deduce is that because you are thinking, you exist and nothing else. This idea has had a great impact on philosophy and even pop culture, like theories such as the brain in the vat, aka what we know as the Matrix. While Descartes has made a great point in proving a truth that cannot be denied, how does this impact our life? Do I get angry at Descartes because of analytical geometry, because he made the Cartesian plane? Well, just because it could be false, it doesn't change how I live. It's true that life may not be true in the way that we know it, but this is a good question posed in the Matrix and in life in general. If I have a life and a purpose, does that take away from my meaning, even if I am a brain in the vat? So like I said, I pose the question back to you and back to Descartes. If I cannot know whether or not what I know about the world is true, does it change how I act and how I continue to act? In other words, does it change my ethics? Well, I'm not saying that you need to live in ignorance. If it's impossible to verify a truth, then live the most meaningful life you can live. This is living that sometimes we get caught into. Life that hasn't happened, and yet we think it to happen. How many times in life have we gone upset by a situation that didn't happen, worrying about a problem that is yet to arise? Descartes was concerned with verifying what he could tell for true. Being a part of skepticism, he wanted to know what could be absolutely verifiably true. What Descartes said is true, but whether you're an empiricist or a skeptic, you still have to live. Sometimes in life, we delve into ideas that are above our pay grade, so to speak. Diogenes the Cynic, a man that lived in a barrel, had no earthly possessions, paid no taxes, often criticized one of Greece's most famous thinkers, Plato, or so they say. The story goes that when asked the question of what Plato defined a man, Plato said, a featherless biped was a man. Diogenes, finding this definition silly, brings in a plucked chicken into the academy and exclaims something along the lines, "Is this too a man?" Focusing on the abstract can often take away from modern day living, and while I'm not against the abstract, in fact I rather enjoy the ideas such as Descartes, there are also some other universal basic truths that can be told, like the truth that everyone lives, and people want to live a good life, therefore we should focus on the present. I don't want to say Descartes was wrong or anything, that's just not it. I'm saying that living in the present can help us find truth in different ways. Living in a way that can help us deal with our truths. Maybe we are in the Matrix, and maybe our brain is in a vat, deprived of all true sensory feelings that we should be getting. But that doesn't change what we can do now, and how we will react to the now. This is a discussion of whether you're a skeptic like Descartes and believe that knowledge cannot be known for certain, his epistemology, or you're an empiricist, in which your knowledge comes from the observable. There is a healthy bit of truth to both, and I doubt many would say that they only hold ideas from one belief set of epistemology. My point is, whether or not we can say for certain that we exist by thinking, it doesn't change how we live. There's nothing we can change. This wasn't Descartes' only belief. In fact, it would be rather silly to say that Descartes thought this was the only thing possible. But Descartes' discussion was a healthy way in figuring out what we can know for certain. Different ways of understanding how to tackle a subject leads to greater understanding, by virtue of different perspectives coming together and arguing. The best sailor is a weather one, not a smooth sailing. The same goes for arguments. It is great that Descartes pushed the lines of skepticism, and we can also thank Descartes for his great way to geometry. How do you think knowledge should be derived? Are you a fan of Descartes' idea here, in the vein of skepticism, that we are completely uncertain of all that we can know now? Or do you take it a step down and believe that we should limit our judgment based on the lack of evidence? Maybe you're an empiricist, basing your knowledge of the world on what you have experienced, what you've touched, what you have felt, what you've seen, what you have observed in your life. Truth can be found in many different ways, like different roads leading to the same city, but they lead to the same truth. Descartes may have shown one of the fundamental things, one of the only fundamental things we can know for certain. Descartes may have shown one of the only fundamental things we can be certain for knowing, and that's necessary for figuring out truth. My thought of trying to live the most meaningful life and Descartes' idea of I think therefore I am can actually coexist. Descartes has just taken the most extreme view of skepticism, and he wanted to see what he could find as irrefutable evidence. The reasons I gather why Descartes pushed the limits of skepticism is to try to figure out the starting point of what we can consider to be absolute truth, and thereby extend it to the next topic. Kind of like laying a foundation for a house to go on. With Descartes' necessity of I think, therefore I am, we are then able to have a baseline and continue to find out what the next most rational truth is. The pursuit of knowledge is wondrous, isn't it? Descartes, known well for his epistemology, also had a grasp of ethics that coincide with the ethics that I'm speaking of, and they're able to work in conjunction with his view of epistemology. Yes, we use the I think, therefore I am as a groundwork for our epistemology, but how we live, our ethics, Descartes believed, like I, that meaning, or happiness, is the best goal that a human can strive for. There's an influence of the Stoics in Descartes, characterized by his ideals of mental contentment, tranquility, and a well-ordered mind. What does that sound like? Well, of course, it's the Stoics. So yes, even though it seems as if I were against Descartes in a way at the beginning, in actuality, Descartes' ethical philosophy can merge with my epistemology. They are not mutually exclusive. Descartes laid a baseline in order to determine what he could know with the utmost of certainty, and perhaps this meshes with his ethics too. For most truths are hard to determine, the absolute truths that we know for certain that the mind exists can allow us to work on what is important. To maybe Descartes, maybe to you, that the mind is the most important of all. All other things are material gains, but the mind can never be taken away, and the reaction how we live. So perhaps that's what Descartes meant by I think, therefore I am. The mind is the most important of all, the baseline for anything else. So the mind is where we should focus our efforts. Thanks for listening. Do you think Descartes' epistemology has anything to do with his ethics? How do you live with the statement, I think, therefore I am? Does it impact your life in any way? How do you interpret it? Alright, thank you guys.